The nonprofit MBA purpose is to provide new business insights and fresh creative ideas for executive directors and their teams that will help them improve their organization. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and for those of you who don't know me, I am co-founder of Financing Solutions, and Financing Solutions for the last 14 years has been the number one leading provider of lines of credit for nonprofits throughout the United States. We've been doing this a long time, and the line of credit for nonprofits has always been really, really well received, and we have like a 5-star rating, which is great. And if you're interested in learning more about a line of credit for your organization, please visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. And today I am very excited to be speaking with Elizabeth Weber from Weber Business Services. And Liz Weber, a leadership, a strategic and succession planning consultant, speaker, and author. She really helps her clients focus on the right things at the right time to get the right impact, which is really what a good consultant / coach really does. Liz helps understand the unique challenges. Well, Liz does understand the unique challenges of nonprofits and associations. She has consulted with various nonprofits and has served on various association boards at local, state, national, and international levels, and has won various awards for her service. Liz also has written 10 books and has consulted in over 20 countries. Liz, welcome to today's Nonprofit MBA podcast.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm really happy to be here talking with you today.
I'm glad you're here too. And today what we're going to be talking about is developing leaders and leadership depth at your organization, at nonprofits. The thing that I've seen often is, the founder of the organization comes in, they get it, the organization ramped up. They, get to that magic number of about 1.5 million in revenue a year or higher, and it's time that the founder stops doing everything, and that's when they really need to look at developing leaders or even developing their own leadership style, because up until that point, what I've seen is in both businesses and nonprofits that the person who starts the organization fills 3 roles. They're the leader, they're the worker bee, and they're the manager. So they do everything. So would you agree with that kind of concept, the way I laid it out?
Absolutely. And it's interesting that is where we started this conversation, Stephen, because that premise and that challenge of founders is the reason I created my leadership model, the 5 stages of focused leadership development. Because whether we're talking nonprofit, not-for-profit, or profit, founders who are passionate, who are driven, who are maybe the most technically competent, fall into the exact trap that you talked about. They are the individual that has the vision of, where is this need in my community, or where is this need with my customers? They have the technical expertise, or they have the connections within the community to raise the money, to get things moving and get things going. And they also really have a vision for how to pull things together. So, whether it's their first 1.5 million in revenues or whatever, they are the ones that are the busy hamster on the wheel, running 93,000 miles an hour until it gets to a certain point of scale where they can't do it all anymore. And what I quite often see is balls start falling. Mistakes start getting made. People on the team start leaving because it's becoming very disorganized, and it's like a bunch of crazy mice running into each other all the time. And the person who has founded the organization has peaked out at either their intellectual capabilities to take it to the next step, or to your point, their management and leadership skills have tapped out, or there's just physically they're exhausted, they can't do anymore, and they need to. My big thing is learn to let go and develop and train others to do the roles that they are being asked to do.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because I've been I've built 7 companies, and when I look back at when I've developed my leadership style, um, when you have a methodology like the idea of leadership manager and worker bee, and I look back and I'm like, boy, that was exactly correct. I was doing all 3 of those things. And when you do all 3 of those things, you're not going to be the best at all 3 of them. So something is often going to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, what suffered for, let's just say for me, is the leadership part, right? And then when I got a director of operations, then I was able to focus on the leadership part, and I didn't have to do the managing, and certainly didn't want to do and didn't do the worker bee type of stuff. But when you see other people, some people won't let go, right?
Exactly.
They won't let go. And it's the number one thing I've seen with founders. They are control freaks.
Yeah.
And it's the number one thing that I see that holds them back in their organization. Is that your observation too?
Absolutely. And it's control freak in, let's be honest, there are just some people that are control freaks that want to do it all. But the other thing that I see very frequently, and I'm this way too to a certain degree, is I know that if I'm the one that has started this, I've built it to where it is right now, I've created the relationships, I've got the infrastructure that's working. It's not perfect, but it's working. And now if I bring you in, Stephen, and I have to hand an element of this operation over to you, and if you don't do it exactly the way that I need it to be done, we run the risk of you screwing it up. And then that means I have to just fix it. And I'm already working 27 hours a day. So what I do, for the best of intentions, is I don't allow you to do what I brought you in to do, because I don't want you to make a mistake that's going to create more work for me. And so as soon as I start seeing you veer off track from exactly the way that I did it, I snatch that responsibility back from you to protect it. And then you, being a smart man, are like, I can't work for this woman. She's a control freak.
Yeah, it happens all the time. Yep.
I lose you, a great potential colleague, partner, team member, employee with great ideas, for fear that you might change something and screw it up. And so for the best of intentions, I stifle my own organization's growth.
Yeah. And I think, I had a coach for 10 years before coaching was what it is today. Right. And, I think once you start bringing someone on as an operations manager or second in command, whoever, whatever the title you want to give them, you shouldn't expect that you will know organically how to manage that person. Right. And I think you need a coach. I think you need a consultant to who has that experience to help you through those initial couple months. Because otherwise, I would say this from experience, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And, the examples you just gave are very common, where you're either micromanaging or you're not doing any managing and you expect them to do everything. And then there's problems and you think you didn't hire the right person and the person's got no direction and no accountability. I think you need somebody to kind of teach it. Is that fair?
That's fair. And my take on that is you need to be clear or get clarity around What will your job be as the leader? And what will this individual's job be as your COO?
Mm-hmm.
And let's sit down and create an org chart and just create some lists of some things going forward of what you're going to handle, Stephen, given your job as executive director or whatever your title was, and what this individual's responsibilities are going to be. And I know that sounds like management 101, but I can't tell you how many times I've done that activity with very intelligent, very seasoned executives who are having conflicts within their executive team because we've got somebody new coming in, and the people that have been there for years that are now having to have some of those responsibilities pulled away and formed into a new position on the executive team. They don't know how to deal with it because I've always done that. I've done that for 15 years, and now Stephen's going to take that away from me. Did you hear what I just said? He's going to take it away from me. And it gets that clarity around what does this position need to do for the organization to allow you to move that mission forward? And then given the individuals in those roles, what do you need of them? What are going to be the deliverables out of that position for them to be successful? And again, it sounds like a really basic exercise, but man, when I've done it, it's been eye-opening. And I still remember one man sitting in my conference room in the office, and we did this exercise because he was so frustrated with two people on his executive team. And I said, well, let's just sit down, what you expect of each of them. And we wrote the list, and he was expecting the same things from both of them. And they had two different positions. And so I think that's your point. It's the challenge of the founder and whomever they're working with as an executive team to get clear on what do you need of me in my role as ED? What does that mean for this organization? What do I need of the CFO? What do I need of the COO? Or whatever your titles are. What does that position need to do to help carry this organization's mission forward?
I like what you said earlier because it is so true. This is management 101, right? Mm-hmm. And yet so many people don't do it. And it's so you don't need a business coach or a consultant to spend 40 hours a week with you, every single week. This is not that complicated, but having someone point it out to you that every employee that you have needs to have a job description. They need to have what they're responsible for. They need to have how they're being measured. And I think lastly, there need to be a meeting rhythm about when I'm going to be following up with you so that you're not micromanaging that person every single second of every single day, right? And people will correct themselves. If they know what the measurements are and they know they have a meeting coming up and you say you're responsible for coming into this meeting with the results. This is all stuff that I did, right. And other than that, it doesn't take a lot more to have people be responsible for what they're supposed to do. Has that been your experience as well?
Yes, and it's ironic that you mentioned that because literally 2 weeks ago, I was working with one of my clients, and I had helped facilitate the creation of their strategic plan. It's a 4-year plan. They're moving into year 2, and I connect with this client every quarter so we can review, update, and tweak the plan. They were having horrendous issues because last year 3 major non-anticipated issues presented themselves that had to be addressed. So needless to say, the wish list on the strategic plan got slammed to the side a little bit. And morale was in the tank. It was really bad. And in mid-June of this year, I'm very, very grateful to the ED of this organization. I talked with him and he said, Liz, I don't know what to do. It's just, we got to get some of these things done by the end of the year. And my people the morale's, I've never seen it this low. And I said, would it help you if I talked to your management team? Because I know a lot of these people, and find out from them what would legitimately be helpful to them, because they got to get this stuff done. And he said, do it. Find out what's going on. And I had, Stephen, I had 20-minute one-on-ones, no longer than that, 20-minute one-on-ones with 18 different executives. And the theme came back was, tell us what the top 3 priorities are. We can't get everything done, but tell us what the top 3 are. So I went back to the ED and I told them, I said, this is what they need from you. They need clarity. What are the top 3? No holes barred, nothing else. Focus on this. I said, but then here's what you need to do. You need to follow up with them at least every 2 weeks. You've got to be meeting one-on-one with them, because the other thing that they said is they're not able to communicate with you. There's like this big wall because you're so concerned with getting stuff done. You have your head down in front of your computer. They can't talk with you. There's no rhythm between the two of you. You need to meet with them. And your job as the ED is you have to clear roadblocks for them, because they've got to get stuff done, but you have the authority, the budget, the connection, and the power to clear roadblocks for them. So every 2 weeks, you got to have a meeting with them. It doesn't need to be an hour meeting. It can be a 10-minute meeting, but you need to connect with them. Flash forward, Stephen, 1 quarter, okay, 90 days, we had the next quarterly update. The tone in the room was a 180. There was easy banter back and forth. They are on target to get their top 3 done probably a month ahead of time. There's some things that are lingering, but it's not going to be critical. The dynamic in the entire room was different. Stress level down, they still have a lot to do, but it goes to what you just said about the cadence of meetings. And in prepping them for this last quarterly update, I shared with them, I said, we've all heard the adage, what gets measured gets done. But I heard on a podcast, and I'm sorry, but I forgot the man's name right now. He was talking about succession planning. And he said, what gets measured gets done, but what gets reported out gets done exponentially. And when he said that, it was a light bulb moment, because to your point, if you and I have a meeting and I'm part of a big group every week, and you just say, Liz, is your team on track? Yep. Yes, sir. Yes, it's on track. And then you go to the next person. I've given you an update. But if you say, hey, Liz, how is your team doing? What do you need from me? Any issues with anybody else here in the room? Need something from anybody else in the room? And tell me what else is on your mind about this project that we can help you with. That's a different type of report out, where now I've got to take more ownership in not only keeping you apprised of, are we on track or not, but also, hey, Stephen, this, and this is coming up over the next 2 weeks that I need you to be aware of. And if you can call Mr. So-and-so or Ms. X and get that approved ahead of time, I would appreciate it. And by the way, I need to meet with the CTO after this, because we have to confirm some things about the new cyber issue that we have going on that's going to affect some of our members. That's a different type of report out and accountability. So now not only do I have greater ownership of this responsibility, I also understand it better. And I've got to brief you in a way that's going to allow you to do your job as the ED more effectively. I've got to keep my colleagues apprised, who are other members of the executive suite, so none of them are blindsided by something my team is doing. It's a hugely different approach that, honestly, if you look at it, it's report out and tell what the work you're doing is going to impact anybody else in the room. Pretty basic concept, but it's huge.
Yeah. And, it made me, I don't think out of all the podcasts I've done, I've ever talked about huddles. And, huddles are common, a little more commonplace now. But the guy who originally started the idea behind huddles is Vern Harnish. And, if you want to Google Vern Harnish, he runs an excellent small business consulting.
Yep.
Yeah. And huddles, just to be clear, is an opportunity to take maybe 15 minutes with the group that maybe is reporting into you, and then the group that maybe is reporting into them, that type of thing, is to get in sync with everybody. And, like some of the rules that I, had is like, no one sat down. We all stood up. It was only 15 minutes long. It wasn't a time to solve problems. It was a time to go over um, how you're doing with the accountability. So everybody would go down the line and saying, "This is where I am. This is where I am." The huddles could be once a day. It could be once a week. It was just an opportunity to get in sync. Well, what made me think of it is when you said, if you get people together and they have to talk about how they're doing against what's the measurements, they'll hold themselves accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And then if there's a real issue, of course, then you break out into a meeting and say, well, maybe the goal was too high, or maybe there's a major problem going on. So I think that meeting rhythms and how you're going to hold people accountable is a very important part of leadership, and it allows you as a leader, right, to kind of work on what you want to work on instead of working on the minute stuff. Fair enough?
Right. Absolutely. And if I could just add another thought to that. So what I also suggest my clients phase in on is get a meeting cadence going first, which again, sounds pretty basic, but you've got to get disciplined to hold yourself accountable to it as a leader. Say, no, it's not negotiable. We're going to meet. If it's only for 10 minutes today, we're going to meet.
Yes.
And get that cadence going. Then once you've got that cadence going and there's a level of comfort and trust as those, huddles or the cadence, whatever the meetings are, they're happening, then you add another element to it for insight and ownership. And that is, not only am I asking you now to report out on we're tracking against budget or not, or we're tracking on timeline or not, and here's what I need from the CTO and others. But here's what I want you to really focus on when you come into these meetings. Stephen, this project that you're the team lead on, and you're hitting your numbers and everything, is it having the impact we wanted? Or do we need to adjust it? And I mean by that is, yes, we may reduce cycle time, but now our members are more frustrated because now they have to click 4 buttons instead of just 1, or whatever it might be. So it's not just looking at the task that you were given and implementing that task, but standing back and looking at the entire forest and going, it's doing what we said we want it to do, but because it's doing it now, is it having the impact that we really meant for this initiative to have? That's a different ask. And
Gotcha.
The reason I put that after getting into a meeting cadence is that takes that understanding of impact and being comfortable to raise it to others in your team or up the chain to go, this isn't what we want to do. I think we need to stop this.
Yeah.
We may have invested $200,000 or more, but this isn't right. This doesn't further our mission. It takes us off track.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think we want to look at also in this podcast right now is, what do you do when you are in that kind of gray zone where, what I want to talk about is developing leaders, right? Sometimes you can't afford just to hire somebody to come in and be the sole second in command. So what do you do in those situations? And then also, what do you do to develop leaders? And what do you do to look for leaders in your organization? Or what are some alternatives if you know that you're running ragged because you're doing everything as the founder? What are some ideas you have? Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple things. And I'm sure your listeners and you have experienced this. And it goes back to what we started the conversation about, is it's when you have individuals on your team who either already have a position with you, already have roles with you, and when they take a task or a responsibility and they start to implement and they start to run with it. Number one, control the knee-jerk reaction of going, wait, what are you doing? No, I don't want you to do that. I want you to do it like this. Instead of saying no and revert, say, Stephen, explain to me why you're going down this path. Because the objective is to get to here. The way you're going about it is not typically how we've done it. So help talk me through your thought process to get to the outcome that we need to get to. That question right there took what, 20 seconds? And instead of saying, no, don't do that, I want you to do this, which sounds controlling, this is still, I'm tapping the brakes on what you're doing, and I need you to report out to me or explain to me, talk me through your thought process to get from where we are now to where we need you to get. And in that situation, I'm not reprimanding you. I'm legitimately having you explain to me, why are you doing that? Because it may mean I didn't train you well enough and you're going to do something wrong, or you've identified something as an alternative possibility that I hadn't even thought about yet. So that's one basic approach. It takes 20 seconds, but it's retraining ourselves first. The second thing that as leaders, we have to get better at, and I fall victim to this all the time, because when I get stressed out, I got to get things done, and I want people to move. I want to get things done. So when I have a team member, it's like, but why? But how about if we do it this way? And it's the questions and the alternative options that they're presenting. I have to bite my tongue and just say, just do it. I have to bite my tongue and say, so pitch me your alternative approach then. Tell me the alternative approach. Because what I have to realize is quite often those team members who are saying, but why? They're seeing redundancy. They're seeing lag time. They're seeing inefficiency and processes that we have become blinded to because we're so darn close to them because we created them. And again, if we can take 20 seconds to say, pitch me your approach instead, that's going to get us to X. What we start doing is we start encouraging team members to be able to think bigger, solve problems, and help us solve problems, because that's the challenge that we have as the super doer, the manager, and the leader. We're trying to get stuff done. We want to get things marked off of our to-do list.
Well, I think that's the problem right there. You are still in the worker bee mode in that scenario. And here we're talking about developing leaders.
Right.
So this isn't about getting things done anymore.
Yeah.
This is about developing leaders.
Right.
And those are two completely different things.
They're two completely different things. And we resist because when we're trying to get things done and someone says no, but, or why, it's like they slam us into a roadblock. And so instead of just pushing through that roadblock, we need to ask, why did you put a roadblock here? What are you seeing that I might not be seeing? And encouraging them to offer advice. Because here's the thing. The reason we get so frantic about getting stuff done is we don't feel as if we have any other leaders helping us solve problems and getting stuff done. But if we can create a culture where people are comfortable saying, hey, Liz, I got an idea that's going to get us to the end goal quicker than the way we're currently doing it, ding, 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 I'm all ears. And I have to retrain myself to ask questions of my team and develop their skills in bringing solutions to the table, because that's what leaders do. That's what managers are doing. They're figuring out how to solve problems. And so that's number one. And number two, it goes back to what we talked about earlier, is if I want to develop leaders, I need to get clear what I want you to do as a leader. What does a leader mean to me or mean to this organization? And I flash back to one of my daughters when she was first promoted into a leadership role. She's like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can do this. And I said, think of every position you've been in where you've had a manager when you're like, why did they do that? Why didn't they just do this? I said, wasn't it a situation where the manager just didn't handle something that needed to be handled? They just didn't address an employee or a customer or a member when they needed to be addressed. They just didn't do something that to you was so obvious. Your job as a manager is to do those obvious things, even though they're uncomfortable, is to get them done so they don't become roadblocks for your employees, for your team members.
It's interesting. You said that I never did this, but what about having a job description for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
What are you responsible for? What's your accountability? What's your meeting rhythm?
Mm-hmm.
You have it for everybody else, may not, that way you can also see what's falling through the cracks too. But that's one thing. I mean, the other thing that I wanted to mention was, I had one company that we weren't at the revenue yet to bring on an operations person, right? A second in command. And what I ended up doing was giving somebody on our team a dual role. And I said, okay, I'm going to start transitioning you into the second in command, but we can't afford it yet. But what I'm going to do is, I want you to continue to do what you're doing, but I also want you to help me manage the team as well. And we put together a job description. I paid her more, which was a fraction of what I would have to pay someone full time. And
Mm-hmm.
she grew into the role. And not only did she grow into the role, I grew into the role.
Mm-hmm.
And it really worked out well. She was my second in command for one company for 8 years and for another company for 8 years that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, and believe me, people want more responsibilities like that especially if they're young. They want that. So I mention that because at some of the people who are listening on this podcast, their organizations are smaller, and the founder wants to get out of the day-to-day stuff, but they can't afford to always do it.
Mm-hmm.
Any other ideas when you can't afford to have somebody 100% into a full-time second in command role?
I think it goes back to look at how you're interacting and encouraging your current team, whether it's paid employees, volunteers, or board.
Yes.
And are you asking them to offer up insights that they see that you're not seeing?
Yep.
And it's something as basic as, you might have, like, let's say this woman, before you moved her into, partial COO and then full COO. It's also training her and others on your team to say, instead of thinking, well, I don't want to say anything because, I'm not the ED at Stephen, whatever, say, you know what, I just want to share something because I'm, sitting in the meeting with you and this other group, and something I think that might have been missed in the conversation is this, and let me explain why. And something as basic as that, as sharing an observation, sharing a suggestion, saying, if I were in your shoes and I had that responsibility, here's something that I would consider. I so appreciate insights like that, because that also tells me this individual thinks beyond what's put in front of them. They're able to make connections and see things in a level that, number one, helps me have my back and is looking out for the organization. And I just think that skill set, coming from whether it's an employee, a volunteer, a board member, whomever, is helpful. And if you can create that kind of a culture and show that those types of asks for input are hugely welcome. Now, you and I have worked with a number of boards, and it's clear, particularly if you have board members who are not clear on their role as board members, that they need to remember that when they offer a suggestion, it's a suggestion. It doesn't mean it's going to get done. The same thing with staff. So it's a matter of making that clear that you're always looking for food for thought. You're always looking for insights to allow you to do your job better. The same way you're going to provide feedback to a team member or volunteer to allow them to do their role better as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you have to have that open minded, I'm listening type of, I'm considering what you're telling me about. If you shut people off because you think you know it best, they're not going to come back to you again with any other ideas, and that's certainly not what you want. The other thing I was going to say was, once I got to be more confident as a leader, I felt more confident with the idea of telling someone I don't know the answer right now.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started off a leader, I thought, oh, they expect me to know everything. And, what I learned was my people became my employees became much more, what's the right word? They liked me a lot more when they understood that I didn't know everything and that sometimes we have to figure it out together, or that I was looking for them to kind of give me their opinion as to how something can get done, and we'll put our heads together. And I think that made things much more genuine in my organizations when they saw that, we're all just trying to achieve this goal together, and we're going to get there. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think I think you're absolutely correct. And as you were speaking, I'm actually visualizing a former coaching client in my mind, because he was CEO of a $18 billion organization. And to this day, one of the most favorite individuals I've loved working with, because we'd be sitting in strategy sessions or sessions with his C-suite, and he would say, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I need to hear from you guys. And he wasn't being sarcastic. He was legitimately saying, I don't
Sure.
know right now. I
Yeah.
don't know the answer right now. But here's the other thing that I would suggest that be added on to that I don't know comment. It's also being very, very clear with your teams of, when is this discussion and decision going to be a democracy? And when am I simply looking for input from you that I can noodle on further, and then I'm going to make the decision? And I think that clarity needs to be black and white when it's put out to a team that is not used to working with you yet, because it's too easy if I call a group together and I say, okay, gang, share with me ideas of how we can handle XYZ. And if all of you start bantering out ideas, and then the meeting ends and I make a decision that is not what we discussed, everyone in that meeting is going to go, why? That was completely useless. Why did we even waste our
Oh
time
yeah.
talking with her?
Yeah.
Versus me simply saying, share with me what your concerns are, so that I'm considering everything here, but I need all of you to be aware I'm ultimately going to be making the decision based upon some information that I have that I can't share with everybody yet. That's a
Yeah. I
very
think it's
different outcome.
I think it's the way you asked the question, honestly,
Yeah.
and I like the way you just did. Yeah. So I think it's fair. Well, listen, that's all the time we really have today. It was a really good conversation. I'd like to thank so very much Liz Weber from Weber Business Services for coming on today's podcast. And if you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend, and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And of course, if you like today's podcast, please give us a 5-star review. The Nonprofit MBA podcast is in the top 1% of podcasts in our space. And, those reviews are really a big part of that. So I thank you for that. And if you're looking for a line of credit for your organization, please feel free to visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. Liz, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
Stephen, they can email me at info@wbsllc.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn at Liz Weber CMC, and Weber has one B.
Great. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you.
So I want to do more than just thank our listeners for listening. I just want to remind you guys out there, and as leaders, that you're no good to yourself. You're no good to your employees. You're no good to your family if you don't take time out for yourself. And I know as leaders of nonprofits, you're extremely passionate about your causes. And a lot of times that causes burnout. And that's not helpful to anybody, including yourself or your cause. So make sure that every day you're taking time out for yourself. If you have kids, you have a significant other, you got your cause, you got your employees. There's a lot of responsibilities that you have, and you need to make sure that you take time out, whether that be the exercising, meditation, going for a walk, going to see a friend. You need to do that. And because let's face it, solving world problems is a marathon and it's not a sprint. So I think it's the number one job you need to make sure of. How can I take care of myself so I have the energy level to be a good leader at my organization and to help the causes? And I thank you for the causes that you're trying to help the world with. We need you. Other than that, I want to wish everybody a great day. And it was a great conversation about leadership today.